Welcome back to Tao of Twang. I'm Dave. So we're going to have some fun today with a progression that's really a staple of classic rock, southern rock, British invasion kind of sound. And if that intro sounded familiar to you, or it's just so many songs feature this chord progression. It's really cool. And it's a great vehicle to keep going with our work on our three component method for understanding music and creating, improvising and creating music. So let's do a real quick kind of brush up on that, and then we'll get right into this tune. And at the end of this video, I'll have a backing track similar to what you just heard in the intro for you to jam over, and some diagrams and things that'll really support you in your self-discovery using these skills. So, three things that make music that you put together to create music: progression, the chords, right? We'll go over the chords here in a second for this one. Then the melody, or whether it's the vocal line, or in our case, mostly the patterns and scales and things that we're going to use, sequences of notes that we're going to use to improvise over the chords. And then third, the timing elements, right? The tempo, how long we hold notes, the pattern or cadence of the feel of how we strike the notes, right? We could also apply that to our rhythm playing. Like, we'll have the rhythm of the chords and the beat of the song. And that's a good thing to consider as well. Most of the time we talk about our soloing because that's what we like to do. That's how we have fun. But, these concepts, also apply to the musical whole, the band, the piece of music that everyone's interacting with using these elements, right? So let's get into the progression, and I think you'll recognize it. It's not. This isn't a particular song that we're doing here. It's just a progression that is the basis for a lot of popular songs. So I've got it going on a loop. You just kind of wait to see where I'm at. D, C, G, D. So it begins and ends on D. You could also do our chords. Got one out of the way, or locked in. Second component, melody. What scales, what note sequences can I do that are going to work well to improvise over those chords? Well, like I mentioned in the last video, there's always more than one way to analyze, the key and the different possibilities of scales and things that you could use for any progression. But the one that, if you were watching that intro and it seemed familiar to you, or it sounded okay to you, let's put it that way, then those are the couple of ideas that I'm going to feature in this lesson for that. I just want you to realize again that there's other things that you could try out, and I encourage you to do that. What I'm showing you is not the only way to address this progression, but it's a standard way to approach it. So, got our chords. What are those melody ideas? Well, let's treat this as a D key. It starts and ends on D. That's always a good sign. of the key. And then it also just has a tonal center that just gravitates to D. Now, D major pentatonic is one of the choices here that's going to work great. The other one, take a guess. D minor pentatonic. So there's some videos on this channel that I think are even labeled, blending major and minor pentatonic or something like that. Probably in a different key, probably not in D, but the concept, the material is applied the same way. But we're going to go through some of that, but I guess there's a bit of a presumption made with this lesson that you're somewhat familiar with those two scales, or at least know of them, right? So if that's not the case, don't worry. Go back and watch some other videos and get caught up on that, or get to where you're comfortable with it. But this, I'm going to give you diagrams and stuff for this thing today, and just jump right in wherever you are. I try to really make it accessible for everyone in that way. So D major pentatonic. Well, here's kind of the most straightforward, or a real kind of simple position for that. There's your root, D. Okay. And it's that pattern. Okay. And those red dots on there are the roots. Now, like I always hopefully mention, what I'm telling you is a theory. You got to test it, right? I mean, if you trust me or whatever, I'm honored. But don't take my word for it. Here we go. Just do some simple note playing in that pattern. Practice your bends and stuff as you go, too. Make musical style choices in all of your practicing. Okay. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds pretty good to my ear. That's a nice, harmonic relationship between those chords and that scale. So that's working out. What was the other one I said might work? D minor pentatonic. And here's some good news for you if you're kind of, still discovering some of this pentatonic stuff. Take that major pattern and move that sucker up 3 frets. You're there. Now, your root is still that note, right? But now your pinky's on that, or I'm sorry, your pinky was on it for the major. Sorry, your index finger, your pointer, is on it for the minor. But it's the same pattern, the same array, right? Now, let's see how that works to our ear. Our ear's the final judge. Sorry, I don't want to take up too much of your time with this, but don't try to figure everything out in your head and get the answer to the test right. This is a process of scientific creativity, okay? Just try it, right? And validate it by whether or not it feels or sounds good, right? So where were we before I went into my digression? Minor pentatonic, D minor. You tell me. Is this working? It works. And with this progression, it's just, there is so much going on. It's so kind of simple, the geometry of it, but like there's so many good places to lean, and it just feels so good. It's hard to quit doing it. Stuff like this. These boxes, if you look at this kind of 4-note box here, move it up. Now, when you do that, you're not going to end up probably playing the same thing. You could try that, experiment with that, but you're going to want to lean on different parts of it in the major and then other notes and things in the minor. Does that make sense? So the arrangement, the pattern, the bird's eye view of the pattern is the same, but the context of where you want to go is musically different and melodically different. Don't try to solve the riddle in your head again, but just be open to, kind of not knowing what you're doing, right? Hey, I got some guidelines. I got guardrails that are going to keep me doing something that's going to work. And other than that, though, you get in there and you put your moves in it. So, chords, melody, the scales we're going to use. The third component, time, feel, different lengths of holding notes and cadences. Well, we could talk about that for, months, and we probably will here and there. These aren't things that you can just kind of, write down in a book or just present them in some kind of specific order, right? You can, but you'll find that you have to go back and mortar in part of it and then work over here and then go back. That's kind of the fun of it, if you look at it that way. So I'm just going to kind of talk out loud, do a little improvising, and I'll just kind of point out some of the different note values that I'm using. You want to hold some of your notes for a while just so that you don't get, kind of catatonic with that's not bad. Sometimes you want to do that, put a run in there, but be intentional about not staying locked into the same rhythmic stuff all the time, right? So quarter notes. Eighth. If this stuff's throwing you off a little bit, well, what's he talking about? Eighth. Go back few videos, and there's some stuff in there. There's a little playlist about it too of timing, basic counting. You invest a couple hours in that, you'll be glad. And it just kind of primes the pump. It just gives you some ideas so that you say, well, what is he, I want to change my time. I feel like I'm kind of stuck in this, doing the same thing rhythmically, but I don't, what else can I do? Well, one thing you can do is to just really go through a real deliberate mixture of these different values. So I don't want to, do a 10-minute presentation on that in the middle of this lesson, because this has a certain vibe that we're into here. But go back a couple videos to those ones about timing and counting, and I think you'll be glad. I do want to, one of the things that's included in there, there's, quarter notes, eighth notes, swing, eighth notes. One thing that works really nice with this style of this kind of jam is the triplet feel. So that's when you have 3 notes in the space of one beat. So if the tempo's 1, 2, 3, 4, it's dun 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 dun. Okay? Let me throw a little bit of that in there. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So our triplets we dun 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 dun. Okay, it's kind of a quick feel, but now, I strung a lot of them together there. What if you just do 1 or 2 triplets and then a held note? So you're kind of, try to get out of your head when you're doing it. It's almost like one of those things like where you're trying to, tap your foot and then do something else, Don't get caught up in it too much. But really just kind of, stop the track for a second and just go, okay, what is this trick? 1, 2, 3, da, 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 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a... Pick a place like that in a little simple box like that and just work out on that, Single notes will work too. You're staying on the same note. Okay. So I don't want to, distract you from other stuff that you're doing. That stay in you let yourself go with this. But that triplet thing, if you're not doing that yet, that's worth like really kind of giving pause to and kind of really digging into that, because that's really going to allow you to take your quarter and eighth note playing and really put in some more interesting rhythmic stuff. So I'm just going to play a little bit more and then do a recap and put your jam back up. That wasn't where I thought it was in the... Okay. Reset, 3 and 4 and... Hear that, how I'm doing some little 3 something? All right, Major Pentatonic. Minor Pentatonic. Now there's that triplet. And that too. Okay. I know I'm throwing a lot at you, and that's how these things go. I start out every day every time I do this, I start by telling myself, okay, be clear, stay with, you know, stay in the lanes. And music is such a expansive, creative, powerful thing that, of course, I encourage you to, you know, start with the core skills, but then reward yourself by really letting yourself move into that trusted space of like, man, I'm just gonna turn this sucker up and just let it fly. And that is so much fun, and that's really healthy creatively. I'm going to put these diagrams and stuff in this outro, so you'll have that to kind of help, but just, have fun.